Hello, Mahmoud.
Hello, hello,
Hello, hello.
Johannes.
Good to see you again, of sorts, only online, virtually. Now, you just said that your philosophy fire has been rekindled.
Yes.
So Mahmoud and I um, ran into each other on Twitter, as it's known, years ago when I was still kind of in academia, and you were too, and then we both almost left at the same time. And started off with offering online courses around the same time as well, didn't we? Around 2020,
Yep.
early 2020. And Mahmoud has been doing that ever since, and so have I. Except that last year you took a sabbatical, and I've been teaching basically the entire year and writing. We've also just done uh, so-called real-life events. You had people come and visit you in Salamanca. I took a group of students to Athens. But yeah, what happened? What did you want to mention on your on the
Yeah.
rekindling?
It's I that's also I'm curious to learn more about your trajectory in this sense because you've continued teaching last year. And in my case, I desperately needed a sabbatical because I never had the chance to take some time off of philosophy. After I quit academia, I started teaching online, but then it became sort of my only source of income. So I was teaching one new course every month. At
Yeah,
first, it was each course. The first course I gave in June 2020 was
yeah,
9 weeks long, and they're all synchronous, online synchronous courses. Then I tweaked it a bit, and the format now is 3 sessions, and that's it. But still, I was teaching. Yeah, so the
really?
my courses now are
Okay,
just 3 sessions: Tuesdays,
okay,
Thursdays, Tuesdays, and
right.
that's it. I
Yeah.
don't have any asynchronous courses. I do not. I'm averse to recording lectures, unlike you. Uh, I'm also curious to learn more about that. But yeah, so it's
About
I just grew tired, man. I just needed some sort of sabbatical because
yeah,
um I needed some time, just some time off. I didn't know what I wanted to read. I didn't want to read philosophy, so I was not reading philosophy. I was reading other
really?
things. Yep, for the whole year.
What would you even read? Everything else is a waste of time, isn't
We well, I read some fiction. Um, First book that comes to mind actually is which one? I cannot even. Zweig's Beware of Pity. That's one novel I read for my discussion group, which was pretty interesting. And other what else? So it was mainly, yeah, fiction, and I wouldn't say business
Yeah.
books, but more of a history of whatever books. So more international affairs, anything that
Yes.
was not strictly philosophy. But yeah, and over the past few weeks, or December more or less, I started kind of feeling this urge to get back to philosophy again, and here we are. So I still don't know how or what I will be doing, but yeah, I'm more excited about reading philosophy again. Finally,
But you wanted to leave social media also, maybe.
that's what we were discussing. I don't. Yeah, I don't really know. I don't really know what I want to do. It's just I would say I'm thinking about all that, right? Because we were
Yeah.
discussing Twitter versus Blue Sky versus all that stuff, Instagram, and
Oh yeah.
yesterday I read an article about Spotify and algorithms and how they're using uh, some sort of companies based in Sweden to
Hmm.
create. music
Oh God,
that just feeds the algorithm, because
I
this
know.
way
It's so horrible. Oh,
Spotify
it's so terrible.
pays them, doesn't
It,
pay indie artists and stuff like
I
that. So
know.
yeah.
It's so bizarre. And I recently watched something because I make music, but so I got a video suggested on YouTube by a music producer who shamelessly said, "This is how you increase income," and clicks on Spotify. And he really shamelessly proclaimed that every song, why would you even write a song that's longer than 60 seconds? So music apparently now is every song is now 60 seconds long. That's the ideal song length. So you start it off, you've got a hook, you've got a chorus, and then people, because people then you get more clicks.
Yeah.
You get more clicks on, um, and so obviously I rebel against that. Most of my songs, when they come out this year, will be 6, 7 minutes long, without any discernible chorus or anything. Some of them, at least. So,
I'm
but yeah, it's
gonna play
that.
devil's advocate.
Huh?
I'm gonna play devil's advocate, but yeah, yeah, continue.
No, there's why would you play devil's advocate for that?
Because
Would you
I'm
want
not
people
so,
to lose their attention?
that's but this is the thing. I mean, that's why I don't know what I'm like. So it's, I wouldn't want to say I'm trying to rebel against this or that. I'm just trying to understand how things are evolving. And then when I read this Spotify article, and now you're mentioning this, the length of the song, why is all that happening? Is it because also, someone on Twitter, if we're not going to be mentioning them names, mentioned something about how everything needs to become a summary now. AI is, with AI you have to be concise, and you have to go straight to the point. So if I'm going to be playing devil's advocate, maybe that's how we should be doing things.
No.
Just be more concise. Do
But then
this meeting
you're not
over.
playing the devil's advocate. You're playing the advocate for what the regime wants. So you in some sense that you could say that is the devil,
Yeah.
but but uh, but so okay. Given that trajectory, there's something that was already that had become uh you don't even need Spotify or anything of that manner. You don't even need AI for that. I remember when ChatGPT published their first uh, software that people could use a few years ago. It was almost 2 years ago. I was in Sicily and I recorded a brief short video where I said, in response to an Atlantic article, which was the college essay is dead.
Yeah,
And I said, well, it's been dead for decades.
that's true.
Why? Because there's, as you know, there's technical reading. I think we discussed that already last time. But also when you write um, applications for funding, you write in a mechanic manner, in order because the people who are going to read this will also already be mechanically or technically reading this and just be looking for buzzwords. And if you've got the right amount of buzzwords and key terms in the right order, then you're more likely to get funding, which I wasn't aware when I started to apply and try and get funding for my PhD a few years ago. So, and students had, I hear this from friends in Italy, I hear this from colleagues in Germany, I hear this, I've seen it here myself in the UK, that often students don't come into a university or philosophy class to read and ponder and not understand and but to what are the concepts that we can go and regurgitate. And so that's a shift that's happened. Um, but I don't oppose it. It's happening. It's we just do something completely differently here. Because the funny thing is, we just read so Nicomachean Ethics for about it was a 10-week course. I have it right here. I mean, you read it, you realize that there's nothing in there that suggests that he starts the so-called virtue ethics, or that I mean, he talks about arete, which you could translate as virtue, yes, but there's no model of moderation or anything of that sort. Uh, so the text, I think, always draws us in to do something else, and to to contemplate its its deeper meaning, rather than you know, the regurgitation. That's maybe that has its place, but not in philosophy, I would think. So why it's happening, I don't know. Maybe you know.
Nah, I don't. But it's because it's I think this could go in several ways because uh I think, for example, GPT and AI or large LLMs, large language models, and whatnot can be helpful. For example, over the past few months, I've been learning how to code, particularly simple stuff, Python, and I learned how to build simple small projects. And it started by this. It can be a good coach if you want. So I would watch a tutorial, follow it, and then if I have questions, I would go back to ChatGPT. It's an easier, kind of more efficient way for me to find a particular answer for a question that I have.
Yeah,
So as a tool, it's definitely useful for me, especially also, for example, English is not my native tongue. If I'm writing something and I'm not so sure about the grammar, I used to do that on Google, right? Is this you do reverse dictionary if you have a concept, you don't know what the word for it is, or you don't know whether the expression is correct. GPT can explain exactly if this is good or that, or give it can give you different words, synonyms, and they would fit, because I sometimes would use synonyms that would not fit.
yeah.
But this is on the side. I do think that the push towards conciseness and everything becoming a summary is like I was having a discussion with a friend of mine, and I told him that, long story short, as a summary, people need to read philosophy. I don't know why they should read philosophy, but then it feels like, as you said, everything is just, whether the song is just 1 minute and people are losing their attention, etc. It does feel like the main skill that will be valuable from here onwards is you being able to think for yourself in a way, and not only think for yourself but understand what is it that you're doing. So it does feel now that some people might be using AI, GPT, all these stuff to improve their skills and to build on them and do other stuff. Others are, like the Spotify example, are just using it to put content out there, bots and AI stuff generated content, because this is what everyone is doing. And yeah, I don't know. It's a new world. I like it's going to there's going to be a lot of noise. But personally, I think this is maybe why I think the philosophy fire has been rekindled, because I see that things have become all too accelerated. People need to take a step back and like, just it's but this is why I'm also wary of rebelling against anything yet, because so it's just let me take a step back and try to understand what's going on, because everyone is jumping on everyone is trying to take advantage of whatever it is that's happening. Maybe some people want to make money, some people want to whatever it is. And my initial instinct is I want to take a step back and try to figure like what's going on here, because everyone seems to be everywhere.
It could also run itself into the ground, because it seems as it the internet is not non-physical. It runs on rare earths. It runs on GPUs. It runs on gold. It runs on all kinds and lots of electricity. Lots of electricity. The more data centers you have, the more electricity you need. The infrastructure that we have across the Western world, I don't know when you were in America the last time, it looks decrepit, especially in the US, and not so much better uh, around some parts of Europe. So that is not yet, perhaps that's what the Eye of Sauron itself forgets sometimes, what it actually requires to run and operate. There is a theological dimension, I think, to this also, because I think that ultimately monotheism is highly paranoid. The one God that knows everything and wants to be everywhere and sees you at all times, sort of a manifestation of him. And that's how I understand Palantir and others, how they act in the world. And so there's all of this. But yeah, but you shouldn't, I think in general, yes, not opposing it is the best approach, because when you oppose it, you become it to a certain degree. But what will be, because you mentioned social media before we started the recording, and you think about maybe leaving social media. That's really the weird thing, because none of us could do what we do without social media. YouTube is social media. Twitter
Yeah.
is social media, or X, or
I
whatever
mean,
it's called.
I this is the thing. It's not that I don't like Twitter, X, whatever that is. It's just that maybe it's always been like that. Uh, because there's something about it where and I don't want to like I don't want to say, oh, the algorithms, etc., because if you follow people and you have the for you, then okay, fine, you can learn stuff. You need to identify the people
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff like that. But despite that, it's just something about it is not making me want to tweet anymore. I don't know, or post anything. Like I don't know. This is probably where it's coming from. I've been like, for the past year, I have not been that active, unlike previous years. I don't feel like I want to share anything on there anymore, because anything it, it's because you have to play probably the algorithms game in a way,
yes.
and you you either fall into the trap of becoming more controversial and polemic and stuff like that, or you can just use it to share your thoughts. But if I am going to be sharing my thoughts, I might as well just write a blog post, because it would force me to clarify my thoughts and not talk shit as I used to do on Twitter. It was fun at some point when I was angry with academia and stuff like that. I had like this, that thing that I was throwing all my venom on, if you want. But other than that, it's now maybe it's because I'm more relaxed. I don't feel the urge to get into Twitter fights and stuff like that. And so, to me, I all I do now is share pictures of my book, memes, and say read philosophy. It's like
Show your
that's
book.
it. Uh,
We'll
yeah.
link to it.
Philosophy for Business Leaders, which is just introduction to philosophy, and I do discuss regurgitate virtue ethics there, by the way. Just to-
Which is no, no, which is fair enough. It's its own academic field, and Aristotle does talk about virtue. Um,
he does talk about moderation, by the way, as well.
well, to a certain degree,
Yeah.
yes, but not. But in a sense, but it's not moderation in between an already fixed, two already fixed
Oh,
vices,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. No,
And
no,
this
that's yeah.
and once this is something that so when you start, I mean, this is how you teach this maybe to high school students or similar, but it's just the same as with it's it's a framework basically.
Yeah.
And once you've got this framework, then it's very difficult to read what he says because for example, to become courageous, he says you have to expose yourself to terror. So, and you're only courageous in an extreme situation, in the kairos, when the kairos strikes. So, it's always also about time and the way in which the cardinal virtues, and make this out to be that you're basically an angel who is always perfectly balanced. No, the
Yeah.
balance
No.
comes about in action. And the highest activity, and this is the passage I'm currently reading, is theoria. So is ultimately what this book prepares us for is speculative thinking, is
Yep.
thinking itself.
Yeah.
So may I just read this then here? This
Definitely.
is book 10, chapter 7. But if eudaimonia, this is the Loeb, and I'm going to rephrase a few things. But if eudaimonia consists in activity in accordance with arete or virtue, it is reasonable that it should be activity in accordance with the highest virtue or arete, and this will be the virtue of the best part of us, which is nous, which nous is sometimes translated as intellect or reason, etc. And that leads us to the divine. Or theoria is sometimes translated as either speculative thought or as contemplation. So this is what the book prepares us for, prepares its readers for. So it's to use the notion from Pierre Hadot, it's a spiritual exercise,
Yep.
which is what all of philosophy is. Which is why I think still that on teaching philosophy online, because we don't have any, like if you, because I make a point of this explicitly, you get nothing when you come. You get no certificate, you get no PDF that says I completed this course, not even that, and so there's no credit points or anything, and that changes the dynamic of reading, and it leads to, I don't know what it leads to. It basically, it's just an invitation to, well, to use this term here for theoria ultimately, and so that's the freedom I think this affords. The unfreedom that it also brings is that you have to be active, you have to be present, and something that you mentioned, this is very important. Also, you have to play with it, but you must not let yourself be dominated by it, which is the logic of the algorithm. In order to, because you want to get the high engagement, etc., etc., um, which is not even necessary, I find. I
Yeah.
mean, I still have almost no subscribers. Let's face it. I've had this channel now for 6 years, and I have what 17,000 subscribers, maybe. I have almost none on Twitter. So I don't know how to use Twitter. I just
Yep.
uh, but I have found other people like you, and a few smaller accounts who share just incredible. There's someone, I won't mention his name, but there's someone who I'm writing. This is the first time I'm doing this. I've written the lectures and I'm rewriting the entire lectures on Aristotle, and I also want to self-publish them as a book. And I'm quote someone I know on Twitter. I don't know really who he is. I'm going to quote him because he helped me translate something into English, a German word and a Greek term that I couldn't find any word for. So I'm
Nice.
going to quote him now, and so that's happened a couple of times with this person. So it's extremely helpful. And you can almost, it's almost like if you filter it out really well, which I haven't been doing this past month, to be honest. But if you filter really well on Twitter, you can actually use it almost like your private think tank. So
Yep.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
then you're working with people, um, and because you're not in competition. As you know, in academia, you're basically in competition with your colleagues, especially on the lower end of the spectrum, which is where we were.
Yeah.
um, oh, we can just complain and moan about it forever, but can't we? Actually, no. There's good things about academia too. And the funny thing is, like I've actually had more speaking engagements ever since I left academic ones than before when I was still in it. That was also a lot freer. But so you can, when you filter it out really well, you can basically use, let's say, Twitter or Substack or any of these to be in touch with others who will, because they are just there to share. Oh, this is my favorite quote from Plotinus, and here's another one from Aristotle, and here's another one from Plato, because they do it anyways.
Yep.
And if you're honest, like I could just rip it off, but I, I mean, just no. But if you're honest also, and you're an honest broker. So I approached this guy and I messaged him saying, "This is really great. Thank you for this. Can I quote you?" And then he gave me his real name, so I can have his real name in the book, and quote his name. And so that's, I think, one way of perhaps using it. And then, but you have to radically filter out all
Yep.
the madness.
Yeah, by leaving, I don't mean like, deactivating, etc., but leaving as an it's there and that's
Yeah,
it. Because I'm more of a consumer now on Twitter than actually active and actively sharing. But you're right. This is, and I did reflect on this. I did write an article about it a few years back about how um, shifting my attitude and mindset towards social media made a great deal of positive change to how I used it basically, and that's how I got to meet people like you as well. And so, but it's continuously feel so. At one point, I was always, just as I said, angry on Twitter, but then when I started seeing it as a marketplace where I was meeting people, and I started meeting many of them in real life, and then through my
yes,
philosophy
yeah,
courses and stuff like that, it started. It was an interesting medium, but then it somehow, and again, I'm trying to avoid using kind of categorical language when it comes to how things are, because it's constantly changing as well. You
yeah,
never know how the algorithm it changes, etc., but it does feel like many people also are not that interested in Twitter anymore. And so you
yeah,
have to, maybe
yeah.
it's that,
Wow.
maybe I grew tired, like maybe I don't, because I'm not spending time on Twitter as much as before, so it's becoming more difficult to discover new people, etc., etc. So it's you end up kind of falling into a
But
vicious circle where
so,
it's a void, literally.
so maybe do talk about your meetup in Salamanca.
Yeah.
Your trip, and also that I'd be interested in, and also how you would, because you mentioned your article, how you would approach the filtering um, on when you use social media for a specific, it's a means.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what is its end?
Its end is basically ultimately meeting interesting people, as simple as that.
Yeah.
For me, at least. And of course, you learn a thing or two. You get introduced to, as you said, a quote here and an article you didn't know about, like the Spotify article, which was actually quite interesting because this journalist does, and he investigates all that to figure out why many people who are indie musicians, their livelihood depended on Spotify paying them royalties, but then for the past, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, things have not been going so well for them. But then there seems to be a few production companies making all the money, and yeah, so these production
Hmm.
companies somehow uh, deliver a or algorithm optimized music, which is done by musicians as well, etc. But yeah, without getting into that, and but ultimately, as I said, it's meeting just people. Like I've got many people whom I got into contact with on Twitter. Many of them, they ended up signing up for my courses,
Yeah.
and I've met many of them in real life, many in Spain, and back when I was in Lebanon, and yeah, it's just interesting. So, and this is how I ended up. This is the only thing that I've continued doing is my discussion group. So we've become like more of uh, a it's more like friends, the same people, sort
Yeah.
of year in year out. They sign up for the discussion group. We
Hmm.
get together on the last Wednesday of each month,
Yeah.
discussing a book or a movie, and that's it. It's like it's our get together of sorts virtually.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is what gets it going. Like, at maybe that's also why things have changed. Perhaps, like I think I found an interesting group of people I already know, and that's it. It's like it because it's intellectually stimulating. We read books across all genres, from fiction to history to philosophy to anything you could think of. And the discussions are laid back, chill, different perspectives, and from different backgrounds, uh, professionally as well. So
Hmm.
that adds kind of an interesting layer to things, and you learn a lot throughout the journey. So probably that's how academia should probably be. And these circles, like I'm reading now a book about Vienna at the turn of the century.
It can, I think it can still be in some places, I would suppose. I would think that some of the smaller liberal arts colleges in America, at least in the 20th century, still were like this. I heard a story recently, actually, when we were in Athens. The trouble is that they are profit driven often, and then they've got they've got backing from alumni, and maybe they even want to see return on their investment or their donation, etc. So that's an issue. And another, well, in even in Italy now they do what was it, multiple choice testing because there are too many students at universities, and so, but it could revert back if there were a, just an appreciation, especially in Europe, where we have trades and crafts. You don't need to go to university. That's a push that started in the 60s, and it's now gotten to a place where basically every old town now has a university of applied sciences, where in order to become here in the UK, you go to university to become a nurse. Same
Yeah,
in America. I have no idea why that would be necessary. To go in debt to become a nurse. I don't. So that makes no sense to me, at least. And it would have to revert back to universities is a place for a few subjects, uh, which ones they'd be. Probably not even, to be honest, not even engineering. Um, doesn't even have to be the university level. And the stigma has to be taken away again because it's been stigmatized. It's that if you don't have a university degree, you can't step up in the world, and so crafts and trades have suffered from that. In the too many students, that's an issue, or also the requirement to have a PhD in the first place, and not only to have a PhD, but to have 500,000 publications before you finish your PhD in order to be able to compete on a global job market. That's a magic. The one man you may have heard of called Bernard Williams, British philosopher, who
yep.
also wrote a book on Aristotle. He misunderstood him a little bit, but that's fine. Williams he didn't have a PhD. I don't know the story. I think he never even finished.
Many people at Oxford and Cambridge didn't have PhDs when
No,
they were teaching. No, that
no,
was
because
a
they were
rarity.
sorry.
It was a rarity back then.
It was unnecessary.
Yep,
They became they went they became fellows of one of the colleges, and they remained fellows for the rest of their lives. Because what mattered in these places was that you meet with your students every week and you discuss a text. But
yep.
the students were also different. The pressure on students now is insane. The pressure on students is, I mean, I remember this also. I studied in Italy. First day, the dean, who was a nobody, complete nobody, but in his mind, he was the greatest man alive, I guess, said, well, this year, 100,000 students in China alone will complete their business degrees and economics degrees. These are your direct competitors, which is, of course, complete nonsense. I mean, no one is competing for direct positions in China. That's not how the global job market works. But that's basically what you're told from day one. So there's no the idea of a university is that you come in, you take 5 years at least, and it used to be by the way in Germany that you had no grades for the first year or 2 years, no marks, nothing mattered. You just come in, you take courses, you write essays, you take some papers, you take some tests or exams. And in the third, fourth, and fifth year, that's when it matters. And basically, for some study programs, the only thing that matters is the final exam or the final thesis. And so that gives you enough time to start reading and be able to make mistakes. Speaking of being concise, if it's always just about being concise, in the end, what will be most concise will be will just be information. It will just be what can verify information the quickest,
This
which
is,
is
I
AI.
think, that's a great point. It's and the go, mentioning the Vienna book I'm reading about by Richard Cockett about how
Oh,
the City of Ideas created the modern world. Uh, Very interesting book. And it mentions something similar to the German system. So the Austrian system, well, pretty much similar back then.
same,
You
same, yeah,
people like Wittgenstein and all these people like Hayek and Popper. And you go to the University of Vienna or whatever. They were just encouraged to take courses, and they didn't declare their major until maybe the last year. And you were encouraged basically to adopt an interdisciplinary approach in at college. And this is one, and two, because it's something you mentioned about profit and stuff like that. I don't know if in Germany it was like that, but definitely the case in Austria and in the UK up to a certain point.
yeah,
The concept of private tutor associated with the university. There were those who had a permanent position at the university. They were full timers and they were getting paid by the university. And then there
yeah,
were the private students, whom, as it turns out, the majority were those people like Freud and these people who did not have a permanent position at the university, and they depended on students signing up for their courses and paying them directly,
yeah,
which is basically interesting because uh, Adam Smith was also one of them. You were encouraged to just try to become as accessible as possible. Try to discuss the course material to students. They would, and you would do it. So you were basically not tied to the bureaucracy of the university. All you had to do was just like a lecturer
mm,
of nowadays. You don't do anything, and the students just pay you. That did not turn out well for many. I don't want to mix the names up, but then there was at least one. I forgot who he was, whose lectures were so dry in Vienna. He would write on the board his back to the students. No one could understand what he was saying, so that by the end of the course there was only one student there. So yeah, but this is a different story. But speaking of, you know profit versus whatever, it does seem like it was something they did, something like you and I are doing now. Maybe we're not
yeah.
associated with academia or with a university, but then that's definitely what we're doing. Like students pay us directly, we we teach a course, and that's it.
Yeah.
Um, but then on the side, they also had circles and were heavily involved in setting up centers outside the university as well. I'm referring to the Vienna circles and people who were very active socially as well. People would start, it was very intellectually active. And the more I'm reading about it, the more I'm thinking it might not be the university nowadays, but this is definitely happening around. So you see people on Twitter, you see people elsewhere. They're just setting up their own thing. They have
Yeah.
discussions, intellectual exchanges here and there, Substack, newsletters, articles, etc. So kind of is similar. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. But it needs to have, I think, a strong, well, for some ideological core, or a strong core of it needs to have a foundation, um, so that sorry, it needs to have a foundation so that there can be, um, so that it can translate into something. Because one of the questions, that I have is, how can this translate into something uh, physical? Let's just use that word. Um, so in some sense, we live in a city of ideas now, or in cities of ideas, or in a republic of letters, and or a digital virtual republic of letters, a cosmopolis, as some might call it, perhaps also. But at some point, it also needs to, I think, center itself somewhere. It needs to, as much as I do and enjoy the online work, I do want to get to at some point where there is actually a physical location where at least um, once a year or so. And this could be, I don't know if it's a good idea that this keeps changing, that it's different cities every year, whether you have one fixed center for it. Um, I don't know what that might look like. By the way, Heidegger, I'm looking around now, here is the Grundbegriffe der Metaphysik. This was a course that he was a lecturer a professor already in Freiburg, but he did also have private students for this one. And now here's a very interesting book. Where is it? Somewhere. It's called Das Geld der Dichter, the money of the poets. I have no idea where it is now. It's on the Goethe era. Can't find it. I should be able to find it though. Which is unfortunately only available in German and actually now out of print already. But it lists from the entire time of Goethe, the people like Hegel and your favorite Schelling, and others who at some point were made professors, or in other cases lost their professorship, like Fichte, because he was um, accused of being an atheist. So Fichte, the Wissenschaftslehre is somewhere here. He wrote the Wissenschafts. He rewrote the Wissenschaftslehre every year, and he held the lectures. Then he presented them privately in Berlin. He was he worked in marketing for his brothers in textile. They were some sort of textile business, and he did marketing research for them, and other things to make ends meet. But also, once they were made professors, they didn't earn that poorly. Actually, I don't
Yeah.
know if I mentioned. Did I mention this last time? I don't know. But they so Schelling in the end, this because you're a Schelling reader. Schelling in the end earned €1 million a year when he was professor in Berlin. So he actually then he cashed in, as it were. And Goethe
Yeah.
was pretty good too. But you can see that none of them were. even Hölderlin had a patron and lived off his
Eh, but-
mother's wealth. Either there was patronage, or they came from money, or they were really good with money. In the case of Goethe, Goethe was everything. He had a patron, but he came from money, and he was also extremely good with money. So when he died, he left behind a fortune of around 100 million euros or something in today's terms.
yeah,
Um, so what you could, I think, what we can see is that there are in this period people who are extremely active, uh, but they follow not a career path, but they follow what they have to do, what they have to write, rather than what you have. So what they want and need to write because there's a genuine call, or you said before, an urge, rather than, oh, this is the current topic or thing in academia, and hence this is where I go.
yeah, and but but that so eventually the patronage system was how they many of them made their living as well, right? They were commissioned, maybe, or many of them were also private tutors, because at the end of the day they needed to make ends meet. And
Yeah,
this, but on the, because in relation to what you were saying about colleges and making profit and stuff like that,
yeah,
maybe at a larger scale this becomes problematic, because at the end of the day, I mean, the university needs to, we- let's not get there, because there's bureaucracy there, and wages are inflated and they pay more to whatever. But in the case of people who are trying to do this on their own, eventually, like, yes, we are not making it for profit, whatever that means, but still
but you have
you
to
need to
eat.
make ends meet.
Yeah,
But speaking of following a particular urge, because that's I'm really fascinated by this. The Vienna. I did read Fin de siècle Vienna, or however it's pronounced,
yeah.
before, but this is now I'm reading this book. It's yeah, it's just interesting to see how things, the types of problems people were facing. Speaking of Goethe and Hölderlin and Fichte and Schelling, we're
Yeah.
also going to be reading Magnificent Rebels later this year as well. I don't know if you had the chance to read the book. I don't know
No.
if it's good or not, but it looks good. Um, about also the romantics, German idealists.
Yeah.
Yeah. So following the urge versus writing what you have to write because the algorithm, was it really just following your urge? Is it always about following your calling or writing what you're more interested in? Or ultimately, if you have a patron, you're still conditioned by the fact
Well,
that they're commissioning you to,
it's
because also in relation to academia and conferences and abstracts, I was thinking along the lines of AI algorithms versus, committees that make decisions. And so they condition your abstract and the dissertation advisor, if they're not happy. So it's
yeah,
all throughout history, it does seem like there, unless
always.
you have the
Yeah.
money to sustain yourself by yourself, you're partly conditioned by,
Well, you're always conditioned, even
yeah.
when you, because money is always tied up with, or wealth is always tied up with something else. So let's say you're wealthy because of land, then you're conditioned by the land. That means you've got other,
But it
you
might
have to
not
work the
be
land,
directly
etc.
affecting, like, you can have, if you have money invested and businesses and your
Well,
work is not directly related to
yeah,
it, you
but
can be,
yeah, there are many examples of this in history that are really striking, especially in since the Renaissance. The first Renaissance man is obviously Leonardo da Vinci, who wrote, I think is also infamous for lying for the first time in an application for funding, and he was also, uh, unscrupulous. He was happy to build weaponry, arms systems, etc., in order to be able to fund his other projects. So you have Handel, the German composer who had zero success in Germany, but became highly successful in the UK by working his way into the royal court. And he was, however, also not terrible as an investor, so he did use some of the some of his salary and invested, and that made him wealthy enough to be a bit more independent. There's a quote from Voltaire, who was, as far as I know, independently wealthy, or became independently wealthy, but he saw his colleagues at the time who wanted to become independent, and because they were all looking for patronage, they became, as he said, the most dependent men of their age. Um, so patronage is not the way to go. I would think it's, if you go the route of Goethe, that's different. But yeah, so that's not the way. But you have to, like with anything in life, you have to know how to, especially when you're self-employed, as you know, you have to be really good at budgeting. You have to be extremely willing at taking risks. If you're teaching a 10-week course and it doesn't go well, then you're teaching a 10-week course and it's not going well. I mean, financially, that can happen.
Yep.
So you have to be really good. Speaking of moderation, you have to be moderate with spending, but totally immoderate, let's say, when it comes to risk. You have to be extremely non-risk averse. What we're doing is extremely risky,
Yeah.
extremely risky. I don't know what this year will bring. So one thing I did actually is I taught a lot last year, and this year I just said I have no idea. I don't know what to do. So I'm not doing anything for now. I have no idea yet, really. I have an idea, Goethe's Faust, but I don't know yet when. I don't know for how long, or I haven't written anything for it yet.
Yeah.
But and that's that though that's the wonderful thing. It just opens up so much. I still haven't established a fixed term time, as it were. There's no. This is winter semester. We begin on the 10th of January every year. No, I want to be able to just do nothing and then start off again, or else it becomes oppressive. This is the thing with what I've learned with the digital stuff is like it can be totally oppressive, or it can be exhilarating, exciting, etc. If you are willing and capable of, because you said you don't like to speak in categories because everything's changing. If you're capable of steering that insane flux all the time, because that's what it's, then it can be, and I hate the word, but it can be liberating in a sense. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it can also crush you, of course.
Yeah. It's just. I completely agree. I think it's probably that making things a bit more seasonal perhaps would be a good way of putting it. It's just, seasonal in the sense that you're not turning it into a professional kind of career, because it's social media can turn into that. Like if
Yeah, yeah,
you become
yeah,
successful on social, it becomes a profession sort of, and you have to
yeah.
start, writing the threads
Content
and the
creator. Yeah,
yeah. And I think it's this, it's just this is why I do like Daniel Vassallo's approach from Small Bets. He's also on Twitter, and he does have he talks about it in terms of, the basically seasonal approach, in the sense that uh, sometimes you are more motivated to do the work, sometimes you're not too motivated to do the work, and
uh,
it's fine. Like you need to rest. More of a he uses the examples of hunter gatherers and
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
agricultural kind of example. You need to plant the seed and then you harvest, but then you're basically not doing anything for 3 4 months, blah blah blah. So it's, what do they, I read it somewhere. So is it I don't know what type of calendar that is, but so you're basically resting enough to re-energize and recharge your batteries and do it
Yeah.
again. And I think this is what it is when it comes to creative uh, knowledge based work. I think this is the problem. Perhaps it's, I don't think we understand how exhausting it is to do theory,
Yeah. It's totally exhausting.
and to do theory without attempting to not fall into the trap of bullshit as well, like to not go into the overly abstract stuff that are completely separated from the world, or to start like it's
Well,
uh, like not get into the trap of this overly theorizing, just like many conferences and academia. I'm talking based on
okay.
my,
Yeah.
yeah, like when it becomes just too abstruse. Like this is why I like Hume in that sense, when he criticizes the abstruse kind of rationalists. But it's like doing it for its own sake without any end. It becomes just like anything, just like
Okay. Yeah.
throwing out threads for the sake of threads, or throwing out
Yeah.
courses for the sake of course, or it becomes more of a just something that you do, more than like you lose the, like
Fire.
yeah, like why are you doing, like what are
Heart,
you trying to do,
or the heart of the matter. It becomes one of the issues is obviously that
mechanical probably.
yes, it becomes mechanical, and it can also become like a performance.
Precisely,
It become
yeah.
like I've so first of all, the worst thing anyone could be is a content creator. And something that no one talks about is when you actually become a content creator, you very likely will. There are few people who can do it. Um, consistently put out videos every single week, or even several every single week. I don't. I'd be exhausted. Um, and they can do it, and it doesn't seem like it's becoming a performance or anything. But yeah, that's an issue.
Because
The
it becomes part of what they do. And here, shout out Gregory Sadler, because he does put out content consistently. But then in his case, see, this is I don't know if you know Gregory Sadler from YouTube and Twitter, but it's because it's part of this is literally what he's doing, like on a daily basis, right? He's reading the text.
yeah,
So it doesn't, this is probably why I don't know if we need to ask him. I don't know if he eventually burns out or not, but he's been doing it for so long, and irrespective of like he's not doing it for anything other than because this is what he likes doing. So probably that's also important. I mean, um, it has to, like, if you ask me what would I be doing consistently for too long without maybe getting burned out, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. This something that was you discussed. There was a brief discussion I had with a participant in the Aristotle course on instrumental rationality, and it's because in Aristotle, nous, which is sometimes translated as reason, fair enough, is ultimately divine. And that's the divine part in us. That's why in Aristotle, rationality or reason cannot become instrumentalized. It's the ultimate eudaimonia. It's the ultimate. It's not ever a means, really. And the striking thing about the, Adorno and others is that they can endlessly critique instrumental rationality, but they will never go where they have to go in order to avoid it becoming instrumental, which is something divine, something sacred, something beyond the human being. So if you don't, I think include that, if there's nothing there in one's thinking, then it really just becomes abstract, uh, abstraction for the sake of abstract abstraction and argument. But if there is something, however fussy for now, sacred, divine, etc., that is in play also, then it is your base. I think then you're theorizing not for the sake of theorizing, but to stay very close to Aristotle. You realize that theoria, theorein is a basic human activity. Activity, not action, but activity. And we need to engage in it. We need to think. To think is to be. And it's not all that it is to being. And yeah, but if it's, I think if let's say when it comes to philosophy, if you're producing videos for the sake of producing, let's say for the sake of producing content, which you need to produce in order to, because you can say, oh look, if I make a 10-minute rant video on the current thing, then I can bet on this making me £1,000 within 2 days. And so that's a different logic than someone sitting down like Sadler, who basically is just reading a text and has the camera running while he's reading and commenting. That's different. That's totally different. So that's a different logic. That's a
Yep.
different way of thinking. The approach is totally different. The first approach is, this is the current thing on Twitter or on YouTube. And now if I hit the 10-minute, 30-second spot and I rant on it, and you can see this is the musicians who do this, and you see them putting out these videos. They get 200,000 views, and you can kind of make out how much money that video made. Because so I recently had 3 videos that for the first time, got any views in a short amount of time. One of them was on Donald Trump as Caesar, and it was basically an experiment. So he got elected, and the day after the election, obviously I bought Tesla shares, because it was just the obvious play to do, and you also, and I made a video on Trump as Caesar, not Julius Caesar, but as a Caesarian figure, according to Oswald Spengler. And for the first time, I actually sat down to, in a way, just almost like trying to game the algorithm, and it worked. So that video got about 30,000 views in 2 weeks, and that means what? That's a couple of £100 that you make. So that's the logic, right? So once you get to a place where you say, oh, if you get 200,000, and it's all about, people don't know this, but on YouTube, you have 24 or 48 hours. After that, your revenue drops significantly. So even if you gain views after that, it doesn't matter to the advertisers anymore. So you need to get views in the beginning. So this is how this logic is driven, right? So the logic is, I need to get 500,000 views in this video because that's going to make me this much money. And that's a different logic from someone just sitting down, as I often do, or Sadler does, and I do I do a lot, less often than him, where I just read or maybe go over my notes and lecture freestyle for an hour, which also requires people to listen, and I have to be extremely focused to lecture on Kant with just notes. So that's not, but the thing is, if you only look at the views, then you're driven by the wrong, because that doesn't matter. You both and I just want to say this basically to anyone who's listening. If you want to build something, where like Mahmoud, sorry, for example, you meet once a month with a group of peers to read a book or to discuss a film, then you don't need to have 500,000 followers. Actually, the precise opposite. The less you have, almost the better, because you'll filter for quality. You will want to have, if you need to get your goals, ends, etc. Those need to be in place, and everything else just becomes a means to that. And if the ultimate end is, for example, peership, intellectual friendship, then that's you act differently than, oh, I need to be a content creator who earns a six-figure salary in order to blah 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 blah. Then it's an endless. That's poesis in Aristotle. That's just overproduction. It's in excess of itself all the time. It doesn't know where to end. There's no limit.
Yeah, it's that's a nice way of putting it. But even this, I mean, even when you're sitting down and you're just reading a text and you're doing what you're doing, just in our case, it does get um, exhausting at some point because we're not machines. This
Yeah.
is, yeah, but and that's eventually why I desperately needed a break from uh, philosophy, not as a subject, philosophy as an activity in my case, the courses and all that stuff. And I even took a break for
Well,
six
but
months. Yeah,
yeah, but you need to mention that, which is something that is we never we don't mention, which is, in order to run a course, you have the run up to the course, which is offering, selling, emailing people, tweeting, blah 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 blah,
definitely.
and then the course
Marketing.
starts, and
Yeah,
it's that's exciting, that's exhausting. So that all of it is part of the whole thing too. It looks perhaps effortless, um, but it isn't. I
it
mean, it
is.
is
It
to
is
some
not.
degree effortless, lesser than being a farmer, but that's part of it, and that's, I think, what can be exhausting also.
Yeah, yeah, this is precisely it, because as you said, but there's a lot of marketing into it, and with limited means you cannot do much. And so it's interesting, but as you said, all you need is to have some sort of 100 true fans, as they say. And
Right.
uh, this is how the word spreads. That's also partly why I decided to write this book, because it's an easy way of marketing, if you want. People, like a book, you can other people will find it easy to. So one example, uh, people might not be willing to recommend a particular course
Yeah.
because maybe the course is on a subject that they know other people would not be interested in. They personally might be interested in, but they wouldn't recommend it to a friend who might not like, Aristotle or whatever it is. However, a book is easy to share with other people, to gift. Hey, this book is interesting by this person, and now they know who that person is, and so they they now know that, oh, okay, this person, if they read the book, they like it. Now this is kind of another way of recommending what you do without necessarily recommending a particular course. So it's easier for people who would otherwise not recommend your courses recommend what you do, in a way. I don't know if I'm making sense there. And it's cheaper. The book, just here's the book. You like last year, many people, I know many people who were gifting the book for Christmas to other business leaders.
Yeah.
And then I started seeing, people. That's where things kind of spilled over to LinkedIn. People I didn't know before. I
Yeah.
don't know who they are. They uh, shared a post about the book.
Yeah.
They shared their thoughts, more of a testimonial, and then they would tag me, and I'm like, so I don't know how they got to it, but that was nice as well. So it's another form of uh, getting your work out there without necessarily depending only on social media, or making it easier for other people to talk about what you do. So it's because this way you're not really telling, oh hey, you should take this course with that person. It's it's more it's easier, more laid back kind of. So yeah, I don't know.
Did you?
As by way of, again, by way of marketing,
Yeah.
that's I found it probably more interesting than, for example, a lecture or content on social media, or being, overly polarizing and angry.
Did you self-publish the book?
Yeah, 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 definitely. Yeah, yeah.
So it's just Amazon self-publishing and
Yes.
maybe sorry, just 1 second. Let me just mirror. This is going to be strange, but I have to mirror your camera so we can actually see
Okay.
the title properly.
I don't know if you can.
Now I can read it. Yeah, because it was mirrored before.
Okay. Cool. So it's I bought an ISBN, etc., and but then all the
You have
rest
to
is
pay for it.
the ISBN. Yes.
Uh-huh. How much is
Uh,
that? How much is
it's
an ISBN?
you have to register it where you're resident, I think, or
Yeah.
wherever you can basically buy it. I bought it in Spain. It was, if I'm not mistaken, 50 euros or something like that. And the only reason why I bought an ISBN is because it makes it easier for you to make it available on different print on demand platforms.
Oh,
So,
that's
for
good to know.
example,
Uh-huh.
the book is available on Amazon, but it's also available on Ingram Spark, which also does the same services as Amazon. The only difference is that Ingram Spark is a huge wholesaler, and they are one of the big ones who from which libraries, bookshops, and all these people basically order their books. So when you
Hmm.
make it available on Ingram Spark, it makes it easier for bookshops and libraries to order your book because they offer all the retail discounts and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Yeah. And this is why when you buy an ISBN, it becomes the book is tied to the ISBN, and so it makes it
Yeah.
easier for it to be,
Oh, that's good to know.
yeah.
That's some
I've
good
gone
business
down that
advice
route,
from
yeah.
you. No, I didn't know this. Thank you very much. This is very interesting because I had no idea. I just thought you get the ISBN from Amazon.
You do. You can get the ISBN from
Yeah,
Amazon,
but
but
then you can't
it's
go to
under
Ingram Spark.
Amazon, yeah. So if you want to get it on, essentially, if you make it available on both platforms, you will have to have two different ISBNs,
Hmm.
which is not ideal because it's better to have one ISBN so that
It's the
that's it.
same book.
It's yeah.
It's read. Yeah, yeah,
And then you have to have an ISBN for each version format of the book. So if it's an audiobook, for an audiobook, I don't know what the arrangement is, but then for the ebook, I got an ISBN, and for the paperback, an ISBN as well. But in total, that was, I think, 120 euros for that. It wasn't that much. And then you register it. It's on the database of the Ministry of Culture in Spain as well. So it's just, it makes it available.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you try to get it published with an established publisher?
No, and I'm not interested, to be honest.
So you didn't even try, not at all, or no?
But not because I don't want to do that. I wouldn't mind maybe for another book, but for this particular one, I it was just easier for me. I
Yeah.
didn't want to go through submitting a proposal. It's like, maybe
Hmm.
if now someone picks it up and says, hey, we want to sign a contract with you, you need to do some revisions, do this, do that, I wouldn't mind. But my goal was different. when I published it. I was more
But it
interested
is
in.
not your massive ego that was in the way.
No, no, no.
You shan't tell me what to revise.
Oh no, it's
This
no,
is
no, not
perfect.
at
No, no,
all.
I'm
Because
kidding.
no, no, but this is like this can be one. Uh, I mean, a reasonable kind of reason as to why. Like I don't. But no, in my case, it's more of a, because you have to find a book agent, and you have to.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
It's
author and agent. Yeah,
or whatever it is, and then you have to go. So it would have taken a lot more time to put out there, and in the meantime it it served its purpose for me.
yeah, yeah. Now that's one thing that no one ever mentions is that you've got to get an agent first, and that is a whole business on its own. How to get an agent, and if you, I don't know too much, but when you look at some of the numbers, I know a few people who've published, for example, I mean, personally now with, for example, Penguin. But it seems that, Random House, Penguin, extremely good publisher, obviously, or Alan Lane, I mean, very, very good publisher. But if you're not already known, it's highly likely no one will read your book anyway. So you get an advance, and basically you will only then sell books. I know someone else who's published with Simon and Schuster got a really huge advance. But I think his book sold well because he's got a massive Twitter following. So that's the striking thing. I think the only thing now that an established publisher buys you is a bit more exposure, and perhaps your book will be discussed in the Times Literary Supplement or the New York Times or similar, or the
Yep.
Atlantic. And I think that's it.
And you can probably get some decent podcast placements, like if your book is, if they really like your book, they would. So from what I've gathered based on some accounts I follow, even if you get a deal with Penguin, that does not mean that your book is going to be given a special treatment.
No,
Uh, because within the publishing world and within the decent publishers, there are also tiers. Like, unless you're either someone known or they really, really think your book is going to be doing well, then in this case, they will put you on Joe Rogan, and they will try to figure out, podcasts across the globe to try to do outreach on your behalf, because at the end of the day, this is marketing and this costs a lot. However, you can get a Penguin deal, but it can just be, as you said, some advance. They pay you eventually, I don't know, 20%, even less than 10%, maybe royalty afterwards, and that's it. And you don't own probably the rights to your book. In my case,
for decades.
if, yeah, for I don't know how long. It's a very uh, yeah, stringent arrangement.
In the
Whereas
case of, yeah,
in my case, I just, like, for example, I can gift you the book. Uh, I can buy author copies
yeah,
at cost, which is like €3 or something, and that's it. And this is my book. I can do whatever I want with
you
it.
could turn
Like,
it into a course, you could turn it into
yeah,
a workshop and everything else. Yeah.
and no one can tell me what I can do. Or so
And you
it's
can change it. When you need to change it, you can change
exactly. I
it.
can change the
Here's a,
copy. Yeah,
so I published a book on Heidegger with Springer.
nice.
It's a good publisher. Nothing wrong with Springer, but they're very expensive. So the books are very expensive to buy. They're basically marketed only to universities. They're about 100 pounds. The hard copy is £100. So it's extremely expensive. Even if I want to get an author's copy, I pay 60 or £70 for a
Wow.
hardcover book. And the paperback, I have to say, is not really good quality. And they own the rights to this book now for 30 years.
Fuck. You can't
So
do anything.
I'll be, I don't know, 70, or whatever.
Yeah.
When I can, and also it would be out of print because this is, I don't know which series this was published in, one of the lesser important ones. So I can't make any changes to the book, even though it would be absolutely no work for them because it all goes through India. And these books, just as with Yale and Oxford University Press, they are print on demand. They are printed by either Ingram or Amazon, anyways. No, no, they are. I mean,
No, no,
Yale
yeah,
and
but
Oxford.
it's very yeah, it's very interesting, the
So
arrangement.
when you look at, I think it says it here somewhere. I don't know if this one is the case. I have a book here from somewhere from Oxford University Press where it says fulfilled by Amazon. Um, and so I can't make any changes. And at some point, this book they will just uh, not publish it any longer.
Yeah.
So
Scrap
probably
it
not
off
even the
the
PDF.
catalog. Yep.
Well, I think it'll be in the catalog still, but it won't be
But
available. But
the yeah.
so it just will be out of print, and I can't do anything. It's so and it's I don't even know if I'm allowed to teach a course on it based on it. I have done it, so but I did let them know. Um, but so one of the issues, obviously, that you have, let's say within academic publishing, at least for now, is that if you want the book to be in a library, in a university library, then you would have to go the no. Do you think it's different? I don't know.
Paul Millard's book. I don't know if you know Paul
Yeah.
Millard.
Well, yeah, I've been
Yeah,
following him forever. Yeah.
the Pathless Path. His book is
Yeah.
across. For example, my book, the his book, the paperback, is available at universities, university
Okay.
libraries, and public libraries because it's available via Ngram Spark. They don't really care. They find the book on Ngram Spark. It's easy for them to order it at a discount, and this is where they get their academic books from as well. So Paul Millard has his books at all these academic libraries.
And yours as well?
Mine is available. The e-version is available. The paperback not yet, but because it's not because they wouldn't do it because it needs
Yeah.
to be probably marketed a bit more to for it to be on their radar so that they will order it. It only takes one person at a university to order it and they'll get it.
Yeah,
If
yeah, I
it's
know. That's
available
yeah.
if it's available on Ingram Spark. Like if you show up to a university library and say I want a book and it's not available on the Ingram Spark catalog, they wouldn't get it.
Okay.
But
That's
it's not that difficult to be honest. The yeah, like let me
yeah.
world catalog. Let's see where
World
the book
Cat.
is. Yeah, world. I think it's World
But
Cat.
you with you selling 500 copies of this, you've already sold more than someone I know who published what?
No, no, that's yeah.
Someone I know published with Penguin,
Interesting.
and that didn't go well at all
Yeah.
because Penguin, they basically, as you said, they're different tiers, and that was must have been on one of the lower tiers, and that means it just won't even be in bookshops. It'll be on their catalog. It'll be in some bookshops around London, for example, and then that's it. And then they're taken off the tables within a few weeks, even very quickly.
Yep.
And you get to do some podcasts, perhaps, but there's also a limit to that because if you do 10 podcasts, then why would anyone read the book?
Yeah.
You've heard it all, and I guess with I wouldn't even like when I start publishing. This is something I've been mulling over for years and one of the indecisive for too long. And I just thought, look, I'll call it Halcyon Publishing or Halcyon Press or whatever, and start publishing as I'm writing the lectures. I'm going to write an extended version, and that's the one I publish afterwards now. Um, and I'll do it on my own simply because it's faster and I have more control. I can change something. And I don't, it's not about selling, thousands of copies. I'm happy if I sell 50. Um, but it's there's something about finishing it to a degree where it's so a course is one thing, but then publishing, you need to get, as you know, writing for publication, writing for a conference. There's something to that. Writing for a lecture is important, but it's I think you get even more precise or clear in what you're trying to say. Because with a lecture, you can say, well, I'm trying to work something up. Once you try and put it on print, it has to be, at least for now, it has to hold up in a
Yeah.
different way. So what would be your advice for anyone who's starting out,
Um,
who's trying to do something similar, and because maybe as a poet or a novelist or a
I have
teacher or
First
anything?
off, I let me get back to this because I think it's
Sorry.
important. No,
Yeah.
no, this is the Paul Millard's Pathless Path is on University of Liverpool, Sydney Jones Library, McGill Libraries, Connecticut, Ottawa Public Library, St. John Fisher University, Pittsburgh, Michigan, State Library of Ohio. Uh,
Your book,
no, 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 Paul Millard's. That's definitely not me. But
really?
the Pathless Path. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, but
So it's
yours,
we're
that, yeah, wow.
we're talking so, and it's a self-published book. Paul Millard's is a self-published book, so it's not a condition, like you don't. It's not a requirement for it to be published by a recognized and well-established publisher. That's on the side. Before I give any advice, I would say the more important part is asking yourself why you're doing. Like, what is it that you're trying to achieve by publishing a book? Are you looking for some sort of status in the positive sense, like some sort of recognition? You want to be established as an expert within a particular thing, and that can only be done if an actual publisher picks up your book. Then
Yeah,
go with that. Like, if you're trying to establish some sort of credibility that can only be granted to you by having the book published by someone, then you can try to go that path. But if that's not an end goal of yours, like you're not doing it for some sort of purpose because you're trying to land perhaps an academic job and having a book published by Penguin, whatever, if you're doing it because you just want to put something out there, then self-publishing is very easy. For example, the only thing I paid for, I don't know how much it cost in total. We can calculate, but I might forget a few things. The design, I got a professional designer to do it. I think it was 3 hours, 4 hours of work. I I honestly forgot how much I paid, but not more than 150 euros in total. And then the ISBNs.
yeah,
And then the editing was done because I don't have the means to hire a professional editor. The editing was done by people I know. One of them is a native speaker and a lawyer, and the other one is just a someone who likes philosophy. And more than editing, it was more of a feedback about the book, but also editing, like finding some mistakes here and there. And for syntax and grammar and stuff, ChatGPT. Like if I have any, like I don't know how to say something, or I'm trying to say something, it's not coming out, then yeah, I look. What is the word for concept? Blah, blah, blah. You know what? You can find it. Reverse dictionary, which I used to do on
yeah,
Google. But other than that, that's it. ISBNs and design.
yeah,
Now, if you really want your book, because now you can read the book and tell me maybe it could be structured better, maybe you can elaborate on this or that, I tell you definitely.
hmm
For that, you can hire a professional editor. if you have the money, and you don't have to go through the publisher route, because if the concern is, writing something that makes sense and is nicely structured, and you really need a professional opinion, there are many people who are freelancers who offer that as a service. You don't have to find a book agent or whatever it is. You can just find someone who knows their stuff and edit. Like I told you, I mentioned a friend of mine. Also, he took several courses with me. He now is uh, finishing. I think he finished his PhD on software architecture, and
Yeah.
he added some philosophy to it. And he already published a book, self-published, on residuality theory, architecture stuff. And
Yeah.
now he's finishing another book, or actually, he finished the book and then he hired a professional editor, and the editor knows philosophy. She
Hmm.
actually, I don't know her name, but she wrote a book on Bergson. I can probably find. I don't know, but yeah, she recently published a book on Bergson as well. So it's someone who knows their philosophy and someone who's in the academic realm, and
Yeah.
he's going to be self-publishing the book.
Hmm.
So it's yeah, if your concern again is structure and stuff, that can be done
Yeah. Yeah.
by people
Yeah.
who can advise you, and that's it.
And in even more general, someone who's completely just starting out, not even when it comes to publishing, but anyone who wants to do any sort of, let's just say, intellectual work online or online first, and what would be a general advice?
That's uh, that's a good one. And we're talking not necessarily. By the way, I also, this is an actual, like, for me, that's a book I'm actually proud of, in the sense that I published a book before. It was just a mini essays. It was called Sardonically Speaking. It was the first
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
book I published. It's very short. It's more of a ranting type of book. So I wouldn't. It's not the type of book I would recommend people to read. Right? It was my first attempt, and that's I'm bringing it up for this purpose. Basically, just it's easier said than done. I can stand here and tell you, hey, just put your work out there.
Yeah.
And easier said than done, because especially in our case, in hindsight, you can say we could have just not been. Uh, we because I don't want to say mention successful. We can just say things could have gone haywire for both of us, right? Speaking now, 3 years or 4 years after we started teaching, we could have just gone bust after 2 months. Like, we wouldn't have been here. So survival kind of bias, or whatever they call it. However, and we in part managed to do that because of social media. Probably you have more subscribers on YouTube, etc. So I would say try to find try to build an audience, or try to put your work out there on any platform that you are at ease with,
Yeah.
or you would actually be willing to put content on, but not in the that's the thing, because I really was not creating content. It was like, in my case, for people who don't know me, one day I just posted a tweet saying, because of the pandemic, perhaps, I don't know what happened, but I posted a tweet, hey, I'm thinking about doing an existentialism and literature course. And that's how it all started, because people said, yeah, we're interested.
But you were fed up with the whole thing already before then.
Yeah, I was fed
You
up, but I wasn't intentionally kind of trying to do things online. I just had a Twitter account.
you were just complaining.
I was complaining all the fucking time. This is the thing. But then
Yeah, but
pandemic,
it was to be fair though, it was very much on point. And I
yeah,
remember your Medium essay on the state of academic philosophy.
yeah. Yeah, so there was some thought into it, but this is the thing. So I started writing articles. I
Yeah,
tried to instead of maybe publishing, I started writing on Medium. I started sending some articles to other magazines, online magazines, etc. And then I started sharing my thoughts on Twitter, and that's how somehow I had some sort of following. People knew who I was. Let's put it this
yeah,
way.
yeah,
This is one way of going about it. Having people know who you are, know your work, establish credibility, and then just do things. Just like my first book is really a PDF I uploaded on Gumroad and put on Twitter and elsewhere and started selling. But there's the other approach where you can leverage platforms like Udemy and Amazon, the marketplace platforms where you don't really have to have a following. You can just upload courses there. I know someone, Hassan. He has around over 300,000 students now on Udemy, and he has like 500 followers on Twitter. You know,
yeah.
it's so. But
Hmm.
what he does on Udemy and on Amazon, he sells a lot of books, but he keeps his books short. His target audience is basically business leaders as well, and professionals on and managers and stuff like that, because he worked at a big firm. He was managing, etc. So it was problems that he was facing. So he
Yeah.
started doing courses, publishing them on Udemy, and repurposing them on Amazon.
Hmm.
And these books sell. So and he's not so it's he's not doing it for a living. Like he's not. This is not his a source of income of his. So he was just doing it because he was solving his problems and then talking about his problems and
Yeah.
how he solved them. So, but that aside, you can still use Udemy and all these other platforms. I don't know. I think you use Teachable.
Yes.
Yeah, these places where you don't necessarily need to have a.
Teachable you need because Teachable does nothing for you.
Oh, okay, okay,
So
okay.
it's just it's quite expensive,
Yeah,
and it does nothing for you when it comes to any sort of traffic to your
yeah.
page. So you
I
need to
see.
actually have an audience. So
So it's not a
Udemy is
marketplace yet.
different, yeah.
Yeah.
No, no, not at all. No, no, no.
Okay, but yeah, so it's if you're starting out, I would say yeah, try to find a medium through which you can just publish your stuff and have people read them, or like to have people discover you. And
Yeah,
what I did was eventually started building an email list based on all of that.
yeah,
And now my main source of kind of distribution channel is my mailing list. So before I do anything, that's why I don't necessarily depend on Twitter anymore, probably, in terms of selling courses, because
yeah.
all I do is send an email and that's it. Because we don't need 500,000 people to take our courses. Like if just 10 people signed up, that's it. Great.
It's good enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know if that answers your question. I definitely try to not give any advice when it comes to what we do, because I don't know what works, what doesn't. I just
yeah. We no.
eh, I wrote the book not because I wrote the book because it felt like I had a lot of I was giving all these courses for the past 3 years, and I started noticing a pattern. And the pattern was that a lot of professionals and business leaders were taking my courses. So I knew that this is so everything I was doing shaped or took shape as such. And I saw what was more the most interesting stuff for them based on the courses that I gave. I divided the book in three parts:
Yeah,
asking questions, navigating uncertainty, and ethics. And I put it together. It was more of the culmination of the courses I was giving online for the past 3 4 years. I tried to find some sort of coherent narrative through and through, but then they're not really all related. But yeah, so it's asking questions, navigating uncertainty and the search for meaning, and ethics.
yeah,
That's it. So that's not a book I would have been able to write before I started teaching online.
yeah,
So yeah, follow because I see you've been also mulling over this idea of public self-publishing or not. I would say just do it, man. Just do it.
yeah, yeah. That's thanks. Yeah, yeah. I've come to that conclusion finally now, sometime November,
Nice.
and there must have been still, I think, some sort of residue from academia because you mentioned status, which is striking. Academia is first and foremost a status seeking game, which is rarely discussed or honestly addressed. It is very important where you get your PhD. It is very important who was your supervisor, how much money they've given to. We've talked about this. We did talk about this last time, but how much money you've been given, how much funding, and of course, where you publish.
Yep.
So, Oxford and Cambridge in the UK is still the best publisher. You shouldn't go anywhere lower. I guess Yale and Harvard, etc., are still excellent in America, and so on and so forth it goes. So it's you're basically constantly ranked and ranking yourself, and but it's becoming it's changing quite, I think, rapidly. And it's just at this point, so it wasn't even about status. I basically really tried to, if I think for me the biggest question was, will it end up in university libraries?
Yeah.
Uh, because I do, because I just do still think that universities are critical and important and will not go away. And if anyone will have the leisure to read it, it will ultimately be either someone who's really eager. Those people always exist anywhere and at any age, or it will be a student. And so that was, I think, one of the main uh, issues. But once I start with it, and it's very good that you mentioned about what you said about the ISBN. I did not know this. I didn't had no idea what Ingram Spark is. So thank you very much. I had never even heard of it. So I'll try and do this. And yeah,
I'll
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 see
share
where that leads.
an article by Paul Millard himself where he lays out all these everything you basically need to know uh, about self-publishing.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, journey and lessons, self-publishing, and he this is where he discusses the ISBN, how to get it, where to get it from, and all that stuff. Maybe you can even link to it um,
I'll link to
afterwards.
you.
Yeah, and but this the article when where once I find that it's really helpful. Maybe I think he turned it into a slide deck, but then there's an article from blog to book, how I self-published the pathless path. Okay, this is it. Yeah,
I'll,
and
I can
this
link to it. Yeah.
is yeah, it's and I don't know if there's a chat here. Is there a chat? I'm not sure where we are. Oh, there's a private chat. Yeah, here's the link. Check it out. You can you
I don't
can
forget.
explore. Yeah, it basically details everything from design to he used Readsy, for example. Readsy is a TypeScript. It formats your book into for paperback, and it's free. Some people use Scrivener, for example, like softwares to make your book fit into the margins and make
How
it.
do you do that? How do you use that?
This is it's a
Reedsy.
software Readsy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's free. You just they do all that. You know, the margins and the size, and you have different sizes as well. I did not know anything about all this. It was thanks to
Paul
Paul
Miller.
Millard's blog post that I started thinking about this. Like, what size will your book be? How many inches? Understanding, for example, how design is going to be. The ISBN. Scrivener is paid. It's a TypeScript software. It formats
Uh-huh.
your book, make it print ready. But it's not free, but it gives you more options. You have more fonts. It can be more pleasant, and it's nicer to order the book. You can even, I think, it's a software for writing the book before you even export it as PDF, EPUB, etc. Readsy does the same thing. It allows you to organize your book and export it into a PDF print ready or an EPUB format. But it's limited in terms of fonts and the style and the design. I couldn't care less because I didn't want to spend much money on that. But yeah, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
couldn't care less. No, but it looks very good, your book. So
Yeah, I couldn't care less in the sense that I wasn't going to become picky. Like it's if I'm not going to be paying for Scrivener, then I'm not going to be you know
yeah.
being picky on a free service. It's like it's already doing the job, so that's more than good enough.
But so overall, you recommend though that if there's a genuine project, whatever this is, let's say writing poems, and it the idea is never to the idea is to well is not to fall into the trap of any algorithm, to avoid.
I honestly don't know. I mean, maybe you can find a balance in between the two.
Yeah,
Uh, Maybe sometimes you do have to play uh, or to game the algorithm, as you mentioned. But insofar as it doesn't, as you don't become dependent on it, I think that's the most important bit, probably. Like not because ultimately, if you're sending an a paper to a conference, you're conditioned by the requirements. And so partly if you're going to be on Twitter, well, you're also conditioned by some sort of algorithm. Maybe you can do both. I don't know. I this is what I've been thinking about lately. I That's where I don't know.
you can probably do both. You
Yeah.
always have to with you have to it has to be playful though, and you have to be able to log off.
Precisely. Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean really log off. Also, you have to you there's I read an interview once with Mick Jagger 20 years ago, and he said Mick Jagger on stage is someone else than Mick Jagger off stage. And then there's the Mick Jagger of interviews, and Mick is obviously Michael, etc. There are different names and personas. Uh, I think that's obviously when you speak when you turn in terms of perhaps philosophy, that's always a bit difficult to bridge also because are you are you just putting on a persona? No. but also you're not just a philosopher. Um, and but what I find, it's what I think is, it's ultimately, I think it's more honest, the whole thing, because academia pretends to be, it's just a calling and it's a meritocracy, and it isn't. It Many people who get to the highest positions already come from a good amount of wealth in the background, so they can actually sustain themselves on a London salary, for example, in London, which is not possible as a professor to live in London, um, or Oxford or Cambridge in this country. I don't know what it's like. I guess in America it's similar. And it's not a meritocracy at all. It's very much about who you know and who you get along with. And that's something I never was good at, I have to say. Uh, and so many other things, like, where you get published, etc. None of this is as what's the word? What do they always claim it is? Double blind peer review, etc. It's not really. Uh, there's citation rings and all this stuff that we discussed last time. I think I linked to that one too. Um, we had a bit of a different discussion last time, but there's all of this going on that people aren't aware of. So
And I think you're right. I think this is probably one huge difference between social media and academia in this sense, because you can do both on social media and be honest about it. This is probably it, because on social media as well, it's social media and networking in the real world, because we do network, right? We
it's a
do we
social
do
network.
we do yeah, like we do, like we do the exact, like we do the whole every we do everything. We sort of didn't, or see, I don't know what the difference is, but then we definitely are marketing. We definitely are trying to uh, sell courses as well, but we also do other things that are not necessarily uh, done for either recognition or status or citations, because we want to seek something else. And
Yeah.
so that's why balance is in this case probably important. It's probably just being honest with yourself, not even with others, about what you're doing and
No.
why you're doing it. Because in
Yeah.
academia, as you said, it's there's a certain type of networking that becomes a performance as well, and it becomes all too tight. It's more like this is what you do, this is how you do it, and this is what you talk
Oh,
about, and that's it.
yeah.
Like you're establishing, you're always putting on a persona, whereas with social media and everything we do, there's there is the social media persona, but then there's a lot more truth to it at the same time.
Yeah.
It's I've never thought about this, so I don't have, my ideas are not that clear, but then it does seem like I can just do both. I can be the as playful as I want to be,
Yeah.
and I can be as serious as I want to be, both in my courses, the courses I give, the content I put out, the articles I write.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing it because I am doing it because we are making a living, but I'm also doing it because this is what I want to do at this particular point in time. So I'm not absolutely conditioned by my promotion portfolio, or by being appreciated by a committee and playing the politics game and all that stuff. I don't. It's it's very difficult for me to explain this, uh, having been on the inside of academia and outside. But it's something about academia is,
Everyone is walking on eggshells.
yeah,
Everyone. Here's a
yeah.
quote from a professor. I won't mention his name. He once said to me, he was down somewhere outside of London, and he had a position further up north before, let's say, Manchester. And he said to me, it's not that bad of a department. You don't have to watch your back all the time.
Whoa.
uh, so this is a typical remark that you can
Yeah.
get. And this is so, and we're not even talking, this is not anyone who would have any edgy political opinion, um, or have anything to say that you wouldn't read in the Guardian. So imagine, having a basic B conservative opinion on anything, be in academia. You're basically already worse than the guy from Austria. Now, having any edgy thought of any kind, you're completely a persona non grata. It's a hive mind that once it gets activated, it runs in one direction. It's really bizarre to see some of the most intelligent people in the world be completely just blind to anything outside of what's allowed discourse. Um, so there's brilliance in their own field, but there's nothing outside of it. And this kind of that's always something that's bothered me from the beginning, because I was at a very small university in Bolzano in Italy. We had 25 people in my course in my year, and the wider department had maybe 1,000 students, extremely small. There were 5 faculties in total. The other one was one design, one agriculture, and IT, and I forgot the other one. There was a microcosm. The people who were in that university, for the most part, they came to Italy and they saw almost nothing of that beautiful town because they spent their days at student dorms at university. They had lunch at university, dinner at university, went to the student dorms, and back to university, back and forth, and then for holiday you went home. So that kind of, and then of course that life continues in the corporation or at the European Union or wherever they work afterwards. So it's this, nothing outside the place that I work for or study at. And it's similar with, I think, with academics. They see nothing else. Their life where is that, and it's understandable to a certain degree because it's so much work.
Yep.
It's so much work to get to a level where you can teach Fichte or Kant or anything. And also all the other requirements, the admin work, the endless bureaucracy, students and they all hate their students, right? they all not personally, but just the
Nope.
amount of students and etc. So it's not personal. It's just 200 students, and they all want something from you, etc., etc. So there's all of this going on. I understand, but to be, and you have to be so focused to make your career work that, yeah, everyone is on eggshells. It's paranoid to a certain degree, even I would say. But there's something else, when you want to teach a course, let's say you this year you want to teach a course on, I don't know, Sartre or whoever, just so because you've been reading a lot, or you teach a course on the city of ideas. That could be a course, whatever you do, because you've read the book. You could do it, and you start working on it tomorrow,
Yep.
and then you say, well, I could do that in July. You do it in July, whatever. I once had an idea with a fellow PhD student who we were interested in the making of the modern world. How did the modern world come about? So we threw together a proposal, drank wine, and wrote the 2 or 3 page proposal, submitted, and I had already finished when we got the final no. So, so it took them 2 years. They had this program where you could teach a summer course, and until we got the final, no, actually, no, I was already out anyway. So all the momentum was gone. All the life, any thought that we had, why we would want to teach the course had already disappeared. So there's no need to this. It just. But then the other side, I think what you're also addressing is that there's a business side to academia that's rarely discussed, especially for the younger ones. Though I think that's not for the old guard is different, but the younger ones have to be really good with funding
Yeah,
applications,
but also
etc.
like I do under so I think scale is also important, and I do understand the standardization of everything. Like this has always been my my observation and my issue with my criticism of academia as well. Like I understand, for example, why they would take 2 years to decide on whether or not it's a yes or a no, because
Yeah,
does it does it uh, it- does it fall under a particular kind of category where we can grant 6 ECTS or whatever the credits are in Bologna agreement, for example, or in the UK, I don't know what it is, like
same.
three
Yeah,
credits, and in the
similar.
US, yeah, can they earn credit for that? Is it does it fall in line with the liberal arts curriculum? Who can take the course? Because also the students are thinking about their requirements. There's a now it Europe is probably a bit different, and US system is you have a liberal arts curriculum, and then you need to take, let's say, 2 humanities courses, at least 3 credits of philosophy, and you have free credits, etc. So there's a lot going on, and I do understand why there's a lot of bureaucracy behind that, because otherwise, if every professor brought up a new course, that might be problematic, and so they might find a way around it by saying we are going to offer a special topics course, or which is already on the in the US. I'm speaking US kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
They have, like a set of already approved courses. You can offer, let's say, special topics in 19th century philosophy, and then you can do whatever you want. No one cares about the syllabus, right? That's a workaround. But that aside, like when it comes to professors, right, and how they're going to be promoting them, I do understand why they resort to objective criteria and assigning, weights, trying to assign uh, grades and numbers from 0 to 10 in order to evaluate your application. If you're in a faculty, in your case, it was a small college, but if you're in a university with 500 professors,
yeah,
they might not all know each other. Like I understand that they're responding to scale. If you're Amazon, for example, there's no way managers will know the employees, or and vice versa, right? And this is, I think, what the problem that needs to be discussed, because when we criticize bureaucracy and all this paperwork, like they ask you to put out 5 tier
yeah,
1 Q1 publications because this is their way of objectively deciding that you're good.
yeah,
But
yeah,
there's always politics, of course. We know that if they like you, it doesn't matter whether or not you do that, but that's a different story, right? Like,
yeah,
but the
yeah.
question is that I've been struggling with all these years is, okay, fine, this is not working. How can you solve the problem of scale when you have so many people, and you really need to figure out a,
Well,
a
yeah.
proper way of
The-
promoting those who are doing good work, like, because it's different. It's so I just want to put
this
this
is
out there,
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
our criticism of academia is usually, oh, everything is negative. It's not that. It's
No,
just
no, no, no,
we
no.
are
It
aware of
comes.
a problem that we don't know how to solve.
Yes, it's unsolvable.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's not. It doesn't come. It's not cynical. It comes from, I think I could say, it comes from deep appreciation for the university. I, I wouldn't be sitting here without all the work that I've done at
Precisely. Yeah.
university, and it comes from a place of let's just say love, that critique, and what you're addressing is crucial because what you're addressing is you named it as the problem of scale. Um, Once you start institutionalizing, you will need an administrator. And if you need an administrator, then what you're basically hiring is someone who will turn this into, inevitably, um, an administrative body that is ruled under by the principles of managerialism, which is not nefarious, but is the way in which these large scale institutions are run. Um, there's something, so this is why I think I never want to institutionalize. If you do, um, if so, so while it, so it's basically in my case, there's I'm on top, and then there's no middle body. There's now a digital assistant, but that's a minor role. And that's it. And then sometimes people come in, but they're not employed by me, and they teach, but then they leave again. And I think that's also important because if you don't let people leave or be on their way, or maybe even sometimes you have to ask them to leave, uh, yeah, that's fine. I think that's not an issue. It's because if it gets too rigid, you're beginning to build an institution, and then you need to get the administrators in. Then you also need the revenue, though, and this is then it becomes a totally different logic. Then you need the revenue to pay an administrator, and then you start institutionalizing, and then you're building up something, and you're back with where you don't want to be. You're
Yep.
basically, you could actually I could turn this into, I've now 5 years experience. I've got 20 odd courses. I could turn this into, if I wanted to, which I don't want to, a full, basically some sort of an accredited university. I could seek accreditation. It wouldn't even be that difficult in the UK, as far as I know. Uh, and but then you're back with where you don't want to be. So I think that we need to. I speak for myself. There needs to be a resistance to any sort of institutionalization. It needs to remain fluid, um, or else it can be captured.
Yep.
And I don't want any capture.
Yep.
So you need to cancel the audience sometimes. You have audience capture. That's something no one ever talks about. That's You get the feedback loop where you've got the out. Did you see what the liberals are doing again? Oh, did you see what the conservatives did? That's the political side where you've got these outrage porn Twitter
Yep.
accounts or YouTube accounts, or TikTok, I guess, also, which I've never understood. It's too much for me. I get overstimulated. Um, but yeah, so that's I think maybe that's how we have to steer this ship is, to speak with Plato, the Cuba, the cybernetics, uh, steer the captains of ships, um, with an ever changing crew. I don't know, but because if you institutionalize, and you're basically you are you it has to become totally, and it has to become as what you described. You have to objectify. Who do you bring in? You bring someone in who's going to be a guaranteed win, in terms of revenue. How do you measure that? Well, you measure that by the amount of followers, for example. So that's the impact factor that we have in
It.
academia. So
Yeah.
that has to be resisted by any means necessary.
Yeah.
I would say for myself.
I completely agree, and that's basically why Uh, I think this is important. I would say I'm resisting that as well, maybe consciously and unconsciously. But that's why. So it's when we say we want freedom, it's not that I want freedom to be whatever I want to be or to do whatever I feel like doing. It's not that. It's the by freedom I mean the idea that you're not imposing a certain set of unnecessary rules that would make things static. And once you make them static, it becomes difficult to uh, adapt and evolve with time because I don't have because I'm willing to adapt and you mentioned the feedback loop. That's
Yeah,
why I can decide to try a course that goes on for 4 weeks, 2 hours a day, whatever that is, right? And experiment. And as you said, I've invited many people to co-teach. I've hosted courses I didn't even teach myself. And
yeah,
now you will tell me it's stupid not to sign a contract, etc. But I don't invite people like I know my friends, colleagues, people who I really, really know, and we just, they show up, they teach a course, I pay them, that's it. We're done, and it's just simple, easy, and it works at a small scale. Now, if your goal is this is not scalable. This is the problem of in my case, at least for me, because I only offer synchronous courses, and if I'm going to be doing philosophy tours, I tried it out last June. It went really well for me in
yeah.
terms of an experience. I cannot scale any of that. And so the idea is I would always be if this is going to be my source of income, let's say, it it might not some I need to think about something else as a source of income, because if I'm going to be resisting this institutionalization of these things, scalability has to come from elsewhere. And I'm not even talking about Amazon becoming a multi-billion trillion whatever. No, I'm just talking about scaling it up a bit such that you can basically uh,
Yeah.
get more people
I think, yeah,
without jeopardizing the experience,
yeah,
because my
yeah.
courses, 12
You,
people is the ideal kind of number.
mm. But it's always about the core or the foundation. If that's or the end, to speak in Aristotelian terms, what's the telos of it? If the purpose of it is set, and the purpose isn't scaling for the sake of scaling, then it's going to be different. There's one example for which I'm just looking at the website now, which is The Idler by Tom Hodgkinson. Um, Tom, I know Tom personally. I've met him many times. He was the first man who gave me. It was the first who gave me a stage, basically, or a lectern to teach Nietzsche in London when I didn't even have a master's yet.
Nice.
He owned a bookshop at the time in North Kensington, and in the basement. This is 2014. In the basement, he offered courses, and he wrote a really interesting book. I think you would like it. It's called Business for Bohemians, and it's 250 pages of him failing and making miserly decisions, etc. So
Nice.
it's a really good, it's a fun read because Tom is just eccentric and funny and wonderful. He resurrected the idea of the Idler magazine, which was originally founded by Sam Johnson, Doc Johnson, Samuel Johnson, in the 1700s in London. and he brought it back in the 90s, and about he wrote a book with Penguin on how to be an idler, how to be idle, published I think about 20 years ago now, and then turned the Idler into a magazine bookshop, and everything failed for years and years and years. And now they've got it as a magazine that's a bit different from before, so it's a bit more mainstream. Um, uh, but it's still there's still philosophy in there and theology and other things, and few some maybe things that are very eccentrically British, so not of any interest to anyone else. But he it's also an online academy, so you can sign up and you get access to, I don't know how many courses he has now just through that website. So he's built everything himself over the decades now. But he also offers trips. So he goes to, I think, Italy twice a year. And then there's the Idler Festival once a year in London, which is it's never cheap. It's never excruciatingly expensive. It's somewhere in the upper mid range. But the idea, I think, it's never changed for him, which is how can you be idle and resist hypercapitalism while playing with it? He's eccentric. His wife is wonderful. How could we throw a wonderful summer's party? That's what they do with the Idler Festival. What kind of a holiday would we enjoy? Well, that's the kind of holiday they offer, where they take along a yoga teacher and a philosophy teacher, and they read Seneca in the morning, and then they do yoga in the afternoon, and they drink wine in the evening. So you can build it, and you go a bit mainstream, not too mainstream. That's what they've done over the last 10 years or so, because that bookshop was failing. I mean, it was complete. It was because London is so expensive. You can't.
It's a difficult business. Yeah, bookshops
Yeah, yeah,
are a
yeah.
difficult business.
I wish it hadn't failed, because it was such a wonderful thing. It was, you stepped down into that basement, you felt like you're in the 19th century. Uh, it was a wonderful place to lecture. And so, but he is also someone who's always taken risks, but he was also very successful as a businessman. He was a very good journalist, but also was he sort of a brand. I think what people would call today a brand consultant. He did that in the 90s and early 2000s. So he did make some money with that, and that was then used for the Idler, and all but squandered apparently in the beginning. But you can build something, but you also have to give it time. So he does have employees, but it's Tom and his wife who run it, and they have been running it, and they are basically, and there's a few people who are maybe social media manager, website content manager, etc. And it's basically just his friends, people he knows. He's friends with someone who was with Monty Python, for example. So it's those. But so it is. I think it is possible, but you will have to resist the. You will have to resist making it just a business. It has to be something else first.
Yeah.
Business for Bohemians is a nice title to have to keep in mind. It's still for Bohemians, so you're a boho first, not a bobo. You know that term?
uh,
The bourgeois Bohemian, bobo.
uh,
That's the Parisian hipster, the hipster who lives in Saint-Chamond in Paris and or
that's
Montmartre.
interesting because bobo in Spanish is uh, an idiot slash naive person.
Okay.
That's why I laughed.
Okay.
I thought it was that type of bobo.
No, but that makes
That makes
maybe
sense
that
as well.
makes
Yeah.
sense also. No, but you have to be. I think you have to be Bohemian first. You have to be willing to not the grind set,
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
the hardcore grind set. It's what you would do anyways. You get up in the morning, and what would you do anyways? That's how you have to approach it, I think.
I completely agree, and this is, I think, also naturally what I've been trying to do, like trying new things out.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
example,
yeah,
the philosophy tour, because I don't want to. It eventually it becomes a business because you're diversifying your income, but
yeah, yeah,
it's all kind of centered around the same core, which for me is taking philosophy back to the marketplace, and bridging the gap between academia and industry. Somehow finding a balance between the abstractness of philosophy and finding making it relatable to the experiences of people. And that's personally what I think I do best in this sense, trying to explain uh, ideas in relatable way, but also because I'm also interested in getting people interested in philosophy as well. So
yeah.
this is partly what the philosophy tour was about. Like we Unamuno, yeah, that's Miguel de Unamuno figurine. But
Yeah.
we went the historical library of Salamanca, and then afterwards we went to the Unamuno House Museum, the Unamuno Archive, his writings, Niebla or Mist, his Kierkegaard books, where he had the idea of Niebla because he was inspired by Kierkegaard, and then in his complete works, Kierkegaard talks about Niebla in Dutch, no, not Dutch, in
Danish.
Danish, exactly, Danish. And yeah, so this is the idea crystallizes. So you come to and then you discuss Unamuno. Unamuno lived in Salamanca. He was the rector of the university. It becomes real, just like you did in Athens, right? These people were living here. You see, this is
Yeah,
bringing it to the real world, kind of. But not only that, because at the same time we're discussing the problem of identity, because Unamuno grappled with this stuff on a personal level and on a national level. Spain with different identities and the transition from the traditional monarchy and the republic, and they had all these struggles and drifts between the monarchs and the liberal ideas and the clash of identities. And Unamuno was Basque and he lived in Castilla Leon in Spain, so there's a lot going on, and it relates to people because they start these are the stuff that they struggle with on a daily basis. You
yeah,
discuss it, it comes up in the discussion. It's interesting. So because we're here for 3 days, every day it becomes even deeper, right? Because you're establishing a connection with the people. They start to open up. It becomes more intimate in a way. uh, they at some point started reflecting on all sorts of professional and personal issues. It became very very interesting in that sense. So that was an interesting experience that you don't necessarily have virtually. You might have it, but then there's something maybe uh, holding people back.
yeah.
But then I try new things out. Maybe this is 2025. I need to. I'm still not sure if I'm going to be doing the same thing with Philo Tour. I was thinking maybe Seal Maria for
Sis
Nietzsche.
Maria. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but I'm not sure. I don't know when. I was also thinking about Athens, but again, I'm not sure. But what other thing? This is what I'm thinking about. Is it? Do I want to give workshops? Do I want to? What type of? How can I? What type of stuff can I do that goes in line with this idea of philosophy and the
Yeah,
marketplace? This is what I need to tinker with. And I don't know if this is something that you're also uh, thinking about or examining, because you said you don't know what you're going to be doing. For example, in my case, I I don't think I want to write another book anytime soon, right? Or but yeah, I don't know. Like I this is why 2025 the philosophy fire has been rekindled, but I don't know how or why as of yet. So I don't know. Have you tried, or are you even interested, for example, in offering maybe philosophy advisory or philosophy workshops or stuff like that?
In what sense?
Like, for example, advice by philosophy advisory, I mean anything related to C-suite people,
Mm.
like the business leaders, and then philosophy workshops, more of a continuing education workshop stuff for companies.
I've never done it. I've um, I
Let
wouldn't.
me tell you where. Let me show you where this is coming from, because I found this website. It's called Philosophy at Work.
Uh-huh.
Philosophy at Work, is it? Let me see. Philosophy at work.com. Yes, philosophy at work.co.uk. And think better, do better. This is their motto. I don't know if you might be even interested in looking it up, but here's the. So they do something like that. That's why I'm asking. They
Oh,
offer like training
never.
workshops, thinking labs, keynote speaking, case studies, and it does seem. Where is the team? Let's see about our team, and their team is. They seem to all have. I don't know if they're. Let's see. They're basically researchers. I don't know if they are still teaching at universities or associated, but it does seem like they're doing an interesting work in the real
Mm.
world. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of them, but it seems that they are in London, aren't they?
Yep. They have like this ethics lab, big ideas lab, find your philosophy lab. So it's
Mm.
an interesting kind of approach.
The thing is, I wouldn't know, how to approach a business, and I don't I haven't been approached, so I don't know if there would be anyone that would be interested in what I do. So I don't know.
You'd be surprised.
Maybe, yeah.
Trust me, you'd be surprised, man. You'd be surprised.
So how do you do it?
I don't know how you would do it. I would just say it can either happen like it's spontaneously, or you can just maybe reach out to people. I have not done it yet, but it's like I can think, like, for example, I've had people in my courses who would be the type of people you would reach out to for
Yeah.
stuff like that. So they work at these companies, etc., and then you can come up with something. But the thing is, I've never done it before, and so it just when I came across this page, I thought it was interesting. So, but I
Yeah,
don't
it's
how to like how I've never done it, so I don't know. But the only thing I can think of is you can either send an email, and I think it can be easier if you just send a pitch like, "Hey, I do this. Would you be interested?" or something like that. I offer this, blah blah blah.
yeah, that's a good idea. I don't know. I've never I have so there are people I mean that's been going on for quite some time. It's there's a guy in Germany, a gentleman called Gerd Achenbach. He founded philosophical practice.
Hmm.
So anything that you hear in terms of philosophical guidance, one-on-one
Yep.
conversations. It was
Yeah. Yeah.
founded by Dr. Achenbach
Interesting.
in Germany about 40 or 50 years ago. Um, I was in touch with him about 6, 7 years ago when I translated a speech he gave in Mexico City in English. So I did that for him. Um, and he worked for Deutsche Bank, for example. He did
Yeah.
that. So there has been an interest in this sort of work for quite some time. That is true. I just wouldn't know where to begin.
Yeah. Yeah. Me
Uh,
neither. But
but
I
it
think
can
it's.
be it can be as easy. Very often, it can be as easy as emailing someone.
Yep.
That is true.
Yep.
So yeah,
But also, I think this is. I don't know how these people do it, and I think you and I have similar ideas when it comes to the fact that if you approach businesses, they'll tell you, okay, what will we get out of that? And you'll be like, a space for discussion and collaboration. so it's like what how well I cannot really quantify what help philosophy will offer. It's like all it will offer
yeah,
you is uh, a workshop where, or whatever it is, right? One-on-one philosophy practice, philosophy therapy, existentialism. I also read an article about philosophy therapy the other day I can share, and it's like you cannot really claim anything, because the only thing that it can really do is establish a space where it can help you widen your perspective and think about things from different angles, all the while. So it will help you think better, maybe not better, but
differently.
not differently.
Or
Yeah.
think
I
at all.
it's yes, because it does take time, and that's, and so it will help you, yeah, think
Yeah.
differently and explore things from different perspectives and adopt like a philosophy mindset. Other than that, it's,
I
I
mean,
don't know.
it is something worth exploring.
Yeah,
Um, even I would say in a collaborative manner. If we want to think about pitching,
definitely.
like that's the idea maybe
Yeah.
that you were having. I don't know.
Uh, b-
Um,
I still don't have
I
any
mean, not a
concrete
concrete
idea.
idea, but maybe a notion, a hint of
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
what you were
yeah.
getting at, perhaps. I don't know. It. So I've never done. Have I done anything like it? No, that's not entirely true. So what I have done, I forgot because there was something bugging me. I have done something. I have done work for the NHS, and I've found on death. So I did offer a workshop on death for doctors and psychiatrists. This was just before the pandemic. This was in December of 2019. And you would have thought that with the pandemic there would be more interest, but after that initial workshop, for some reason, it never led to anything else. Maybe I wasn't after it too much, but there's any sort of this kind of consultancy work for the NHS would be a really good target, to be honest, target audience. I mean, uh, um, or client, and so would be some of the bigger corporations that are around here in London. That is true. Guy Sengstock has done work. He's in San Francisco, so he's worked for Google. He's done circling at Google, for example. So there's always interest, yeah. And I guess though, but again, when you look at you look at a website like Philosophy at Work here. I mean, that's an institution. right? I mean, this is a
This
massive
is yeah. No,
operation.
this is massive. Yeah.
So when you look at, I mean, the website is hyper professional. This is not a, so you've got here a team of, at least what we can see online, is nine
Many people.
people.
Yeah,
9 people. They've got a creative director, whatever thinking partners are. They've got someone who's in business support, so that's the office manager. Um, so they are able to pay 9 people's salaries.
or maybe not. Mm,
Well,
maybe it's not that institutionalized. Maybe it's collaborative. Still, I don't know. Like I don't know what the arrangement is.
well, no, but so you've got someone who's a business supporter. She's a PA, a project manager,
Yeah, they definitely
and
they
then
have
someone who's
some full
yeah.
timers. Yeah,
So that must be full time. No one would do that in London for not a salary. Then there's a creative director. No, you can't. And
yeah.
she's worked with the Wellcome Trust, etc. So there's at least a few salaried people, including the founder. Um, so that so I think it's possible to do something like what they're doing, but it again, like the here it's like it's you're selling and you're pitching, and so sometimes it can be just by recommendation, but very often you're pitching. And if you make that the main focus, then you're pitching a lot of the time. Uh, and it would have to be like the thing is I'm so, what's the word, ignorant in a good way, that I I guess internet people would say autistic, which is a good word because it means autos, right? It means self. You're just yourself. But it would have to be really on my terms. So one of the things I hated about the NHS workshop was that I had to couch it in a certain way. It had to
yeah,
make it. You have to make it so that it speaks psychiatrist and this. And no. We're talking about, this is what Epicurus says on death. This is what Heidegger says on death. And this is not dogma, but now let's think it through. What does it mean to think of death as the ownmost possibility?
yeah,
So that's, and if you give a space to think, that's different. If you invite people for it into a thinking space, that I think that would have to be the idea. It's like you're not coming in basically for let's talk about ethics, and then at the end we all agree on what we already have agreed on,
exactly. No,
and then you're back with greenwashing.
yep,
That's one of the things I explored because I've lived many lives. I did work for sustainability agencies more than a decade ago. Um, so, writing reports or whatever. But all of this turned out to be just greenwashing,
yeah,
where if you write something I did work for the British government and the German government. Um, I mean, not I didn't work for the governments, but you work for someone who's
yeah,
submitting something as a
exactly.
proposal.
Yeah,
So you're writing the report or you're brushing it up, but it just all turned out to be greenwashing.
yep,
And if ethics, and then there's not ethics, it's the perversion of it. So that I hated all of this. That's why I got basically out of it.
yeah. It's yeah, I agree with you, but I do think there might be opportunities there as well. They don't need
No, no,
a,
there
they
is,
don't.
there is,
y-
but it has to be on like on
Of course,
your
that's
terms, right?
yeah.
You set the terms, I set the terms, we set the terms. That's what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. But that's what I mean in the sense that there are opportunities in that sense, people who are looking for exactly that type of stuff and would be happy to do that. I am not speaking based on any information or knowledge. I just based on the because based on the type of people who took or who sign up for my courses, I know that there's plenty of opportunity out there because I'm also particular about my courses and about how I market my courses and about what people
Yeah.
ought to expect from my courses. And so I end up with the type of people who are exactly right for my courses, to avoid all this justification. And that's also why I'm hesitant about philosophy workshops to
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely anyone, because you have to be, it has to be, you have to opt in. You cannot just sit through these workshops. Like you're either in or not, because otherwise
yeah,
it's you're going to be suffering. But yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, but even if you know there's a filter, right? But even then, sometimes I've for the most part had wonderful students. There's always a couple though where you say, "Oh, God, why are you
yeah,
here?"
yeah,
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 and
yeah, yeah,
some one of them was so weird. Oh, but this needs to be structured like this, and you need to do this. No, I don't. That's the exact opposite. If you want to do that, please go to. He was American. Please go to a community college.
exactly, exactly.
And please don't be here. But it's because I think also, this kind of freedom can be overwhelming. It's almost too much because you don't know
Yep,
what
yep,
and for me it's not. For me, everything else is underwhelming and oppressive. But I think the idea though to provide just thinking spaces, if that's the pitch or the idea, and you can facilitate this. You have
yep.
to have the personality for it and the charisma and also the calmness, I guess, within you to be able to do this. Then that's different. Workshops I wouldn't do. I would be very interested myself personally in, I guess, C-suite is the term of art that I'm not familiar with. I
I
would be
think
interested
so.
in doing this sort of uh, consulting, or I don't know if that's the word, or counseling work. Not counseling, that's the wrong kind of word. I'd be very interested to talk to people like that in general, because I'd probably learn things,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
why.
Definitely.
That's why.
That's also partly why these courses are interesting, because I learned a lot from these people as well. So it's more of an
Yeah.
exchange than courses. But yeah, that's why I'm also hesitant about workshops and stuff like that. It has to be more of a thinking
Yeah,
spaces
because
for, yeah,
I knew someone who did, won't mention the name, but he ended up really somewhere else. We were in touch 6, 7, 8 years ago. So, and he was a business consultant, didn't like it, got out and started a philosophy consultancy. But it's now turned into basically, because it's workshops for teams. So it's now about effective communication.
yeah.
So which is basically a rebranding of nonviolent communication. So, which is the most violent communication that there is, right? It's just passive aggressive communication.
Very much so.
I don't know if you know about this, but it's
That's
so passive aggressive.
That's
So I
that's why I like
appreciate.
Formula One, man. That's why I like Formula One. Their communication is fantastic. I don't know if you hear them, or, but you have to the
What?
the
Oh, the
communication.
commentators or what?
No, no,
Yeah.
no. The actual teams, because you hear them on the radio and
Right.
afterwards, and then you have
Yes.
the
Yeah.
Netflix, and you see how the Netflix show where they give you an insider kind of view of their actual communication.
Right. It's brutal.
Brutal, because it's
It
the
has to
stakes.
be.
The stakes are so high, the drivers are gonna, it's so
Yeah.
it's very curious to see how they talk to each other, and how they get angry, how they so, because speaking of this, like, I completely agree with you. It's
Well,
the effective communication is basically
that's,
very passive aggressive.
yeah. It's, oh, we
Yeah,
appreciate everything. Fuck
yeah,
off.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, but the thing, like, and this is beautiful about Aristotle. What does he tell you? You're immoderate when in a certain situation you're not angry enough, right? That's
Yeah,
actually immoderation.
yeah.
You're moderate when you're really angry in the situation, the right situation, in the right way. You have to be angry. You're a coward when you're not. So, and this is something else, let's be honest about academia, the nicety,
Yeah.
the fake politeness. I don't even mean British politeness, that's different. I mean, no, there's issues with it also, but this eternal, and also the persona of an academic, or the philosopher. No, no, no. You have to be. You
I
have to be a
have
bit like the,
to
huh?
I
Yeah,
have to give it the to AUB, American University of Beirut. Uh,
right. They didn't
being
have that at
on
all.
no being on the faculty email list threads is absolutely wonderful.
Good. So
They
it's
like I've taught at two universities, but I'll mention AUB because they this it's fantastic. Like it's you can really speak your mind. I don't know how it is at the faculty at a faculty level, like within each faculty, but it's
yeah.
there's a certain level of honesty and bruteness in a respectful way that is fantastic.
Yeah, that was I have to, maybe I've lived here now for a long time. It was quite different in Italy, let's be honest. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it was
So
a
it's
bit more cutthroat, but in a good way, direct.
yeah.
Also Machiavellian. The Italians are naturally Machiavellian. No, you'd think, the small university like this, or very small faculty like this, it was brutal, but in a good way, because things sometimes happen very quickly, and there's all this. The great thing about Italy is you've got all this bureaucracy. Italy is the worst bureaucratic state in the world, but it just doesn't matter, you know. If you know the right person, you can shortcut everything, and everything gets done quickly if it needs to happen quickly. If it does need to happen quickly, it can be complete hell.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
but it's almost better that way because it if it's too mechanized, this is why AI bothers me so much. Is that, oh, look, bureaucracy is not efficient. Let's have AI come in that takes out the human being who is inefficient, or all these stupid rules and regulations. It just makes decisions. Well, even within the bureaucracy, you have human beings, and if you get along with them, and you can, I'm not talking about what's the word that I'm looking for. I can't find it now. Nepotism, I think, is the word. I'm not talking about nepotism. I'm talking about just normal human interaction, where all of a sudden problems can disappear because you've explained your problem and
Yep.
they realize what's going on and it disappears. And I've seen this everywhere in the world. I've lived in many places. One example is I was in Seattle. My professor back home in Italy didn't sign off on which course they would accept back home in terms of credit points, right? So I was still enrolled in too many courses after the first week of quarter or second term, whatever it was. So I had a bill for $16,000 in my
Wow.
account because this is how it worked. Because I was only covered for that many credit points,
Yeah.
and they made those 16. And I explained to my professor back home. I almost mentioned his name. um, he signed off very quickly. I was on the phone with him Sunday night. So it was 9 a.m. in his place, and then Monday morning I went into the foreign student office at the University of Washington, and they made my bill disappear. That would have bankrupted me, completely bankrupted me. I would have had no money left with it and wouldn't even have had to begin with. But they disappeared because they understood the situation. Now, if you have AI deciding on this, it could go either way, but there's no one you can talk to. I
Yep.
explained the situation. The very nice gentleman whose face I haven't forgotten, but whose name I've unfortunately forgotten, understood the situation, said, it's happened before, we'll make it disappear, don't worry about it. But the
Yeah.
bill was real. It was in my account, because that's how the American university system works. You pay for a certain amount per quarter. If you go over the credit points, you have to
You
pay.
pay. You pay. Yep.
Yes. So I was covered because it's very expensive to study. This scholarship was like $30,000 for 2 terms. It's incredible the amount of money it costs to study, or more. I don't know. Because I went over, I would have had to pay the difference. But so this is how you can make this disappear because you talk to someone, you're honest, everything. Oh, this is the situation. Done. Same in Italy. So, anyways,
Yeah.
that's
No,
why we need.
you're absolutely right.
So we can complain about bureaucracy, but I think I like Wes Pessoa. I don't know where he is now.
Pessoa. Nice.
Pessoa, the Book
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Disquiet.
The Book of Disquiet.
It's
I still
it's
haven't
somewhere.
read it.
I think it's it's many things. I've got the German version here. There it is. It's many things, but one thing that it is, I think it's a silent prayer almost. Because isn't he an accountant or something? It's it's a song of praise to the romantic dreaming life of an accountant who dreams himself away. But if you're just living for efficiency, then there's no there's no space for dreaming. I think there's something. I think this is a strange thought, but bureaucracy is so inefficient because we are inefficient beings.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of us. It's a reflection of the different angles and corners of our souls that we don't know ourselves. We're not transparent to ourselves. I mean, we can know ourselves to a certain degree, but then you change. And it's people who are in bureaucracies, that's why. It's a reflection of that also. Every culture is different. And you get when you get to see different bureaucracies, you get to that's why directives from the European Union in Germany are done by the letter because Germans are autistic, and it's just, oh yeah, this is how we have to. Okay, done to perfection. And in Italy, it's or in Spain the same. By the way, okay, well, I guess this means both things. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways,
But this is a really interesting reflection, because this is also taken out if we start discussing the wanting the program to make everything efficient, and let's not get there. But recently on Twitter, certain people have been discussing government efficiency in the
well,
US. Yeah, let's not get there. But this is probably it, because the only way they can do that is by, I mean, yeah, but it's a long discussion, and there are different factors and variables to take into consideration, because on the one hand we can also talk about inflated bureaucracies, we can talk about overregulation. There are so
yeah,
many
yeah,
things there, right? But the fundamentally, this applies to bureaucracy and applies to everything. Like, at the end of the day, human beings are human beings. That's as simple as that. So but then we want to be super efficient, working 18 hours a day for $50,000 on H-1B visas.
yeah, yeah.
This is the problem. So that's why I'm constantly trying to. It's not that I don't want to take sides. It's just that I understand the complexity of the issue, and I can see the reasons behind this and the reasons behind this, but I personally tend to be more skeptical of, for example, this efficiency H1B. You need to work 20 hours a day, etc., for obvious reasons, all the while understanding that there are issues with being overly regulated or stuff like that. But
Yeah, yeah.
if we're talking about human beings and being efficient or non, it's like it's like, men, we're if you overdo things, you're basically hurting yourself with stress and so many other things. So it's like it should be obvious, you know
Mm.
but some people are so, without using labels, just they take it to the extreme, but it becomes, so we want to treat ourselves as machines. Very, very weird, very weird. That's also why I stopped watching football as well.
Yeah, it's become very mechanic, hasn't it?
But mechanic in the sense that these players are playing, and someone will show up and say, oh, but they're being paid 20 million, and man, they're playing 66 games a year, when a few years ago they used to play like 30 tops, or you know it's like yes, they are paid a lot, but they're humans as well. It's like, let's be real. It's They're paid a lot for marketing and money and ad and other purposes. It's not because they're playing only well. So it's but then when it becomes just repetitive in a sense, and oh, how can we exploit that? And 60 games, and now they're playing 70 games, and then we have the European League and the European Cup and the European I don't know what, and then they want to play games in Miami and play at this.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
I'm I'm done, man. I only watched the Euro Cup and the World Cup, and that's it. And this is one simple sports example, right? Like, now apply it to everything else.
yeah. There was an insane plan that Uli Hoeneß once had, from former manager of FC Bayern, München, about 20 years ago already. He wanted to change the times of games of the Bundesliga because so that Chinese people could watch them.
Yeah,
So they would have been at what 6 a.m. in the morning in Germany, so that it would be prime time on a Saturday afternoon in China or whatever the time difference is. So completely bizarre suggestion, but it was this time about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, in the start sort of China is the future, everything it would be Chinese, and which was huge in Europe at the time, and I think especially Germany, and there was so this took it never was even tried, but the thought was already there. So you can kind of guess where ultimately this might be going. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Now they might be exploring the idea of playing like the Super Cup, or at least in the case of Spain, at least 3 games of La Liga for particular teams in the US.
Right.
So instead of playing at 3 a.m., they would actually go there and play there La Liga games. It's like, what? So yeah, it becomes absurd. So it's
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
at some point when you're pursuing all that, it becomes absurd, and it's just so I will be looking up the Business for Bohemians. I'll get a copy. I'll read
Yeah.
that, because I think
No,
it's
Tom, I have to say, Tom is wonderful. He's extremely funny, and so I highly recommend the book.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and we'll link to your book here
yeah.
and to your Twitter, I guess.
Decaf
Yeah, show it
Quest on social media everywhere. I am Decaf Quest.
on, on all the things.
Yeah, all the things.
Excellent.
Decaf Quest.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mahmoud.
that was a good discussion, man. I enjoyed it as usual, and
Same.
hopefully we'll actually meet in person sometime soon. Who knows?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, come on over.
it will be a bit difficult in my case, Schengen area for now, because I will need a visa to the UK. But yeah,
Right. I
It
didn't
will
know that.
probably be easier for you to come over.
Come to
But yeah,
Salamanca. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
cool.